Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us again here at KAKM for Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting this evening's show. Up first is the warning, watch, and advisory map. Well, there's no watches or warnings out, but there are wind advisories out for the eastern Alaska Range passes for winds gusting to 50 miles per hour, and that's out for tonight, currently out now for tonight, tomorrow, and into tomorrow evening until midnight Friday night, tomorrow night. And that's for, again, winds gusting to 50 miles per hour from the south, and that's mostly from, or actually west of the Tok cutoff there. So pretty windy conditions here for the next 30 hours or so for the eastern Alaska Range over to about Healy. And then for satellite imagery showing the Western Pacific here, Kamchatka Peninsula right there, and the western Aleutians here, and then over Shackleton Island. Got a system out here, trough of low pressure over the western Bering Sea. That's not moving a whole lot right now, but by Tuesday that'll probably bring some moisture over to the southwest coast there, getting kicked over to the east as this system is forecast to deepen and bring gale force winds to the western Aleutians Friday night, and that should shift into the central Aleutians on Saturday. So good southerly 35-knot winds moving into the Shimia area tomorrow night, and then that'll shift over to Adak on Saturday, and possibly as far east as Atka, but at least to Adak during the day on Saturday. Putting that in motion again, the low center still way back here over the southern Sea of Okhotsk, and that'll be deepening and moving up to the northeast here over the next 24, or actually over the next 12 to 18 hours. Otherwise, we had a band of moisture here bringing some light rain from the Kivalina area down through the Bering Strait, just catching the St. Lawrence Island area down to the Pribilofs and then on in toward the central Aleutians. And then the big storm here with the low center in Bristol Bay with all the moisture feeding northeastward here across Kodiak Island, the front earlier today at 3 p.m. just along the southwest side of Kodiak Island there, and then wrapping back into the main low center here over Bristol Bay. A lot of moisture with that. Rainfall amounts ranging from about a half an inch at Kodiak and Chignik and over at Seward in the last 24 hours. Expecting a lot more in the way of heavier rainfall along the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound. Could see several inches of rain here over the next 24 hours in those areas, but a lot of moisture also streaming eastward now. Clouds and rain increased throughout the day across the southeast coast. Juneau currently getting rain, Yakutat, Sitka, Elfin Cove on down to Klawock, and pretty gusty winds, gale force winds here going today along the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound. Also had gale warnings out for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, with those east winds kicking up to about 35 miles an hour this afternoon at Cordova. Southerly winds through along the Copper River, gusting up to about 30 miles an hour, Glen Allen to Gulkana, and gusting to about 35 miles an hour at Delta Junction. Of course, those forecasts increase tonight up to 50 miles an hour and continue at that speed through tomorrow night. Otherwise, we had some scattered thunderstorms develop here over the eastern interior in the upper Tanana Valley area. Also an area of thunderstorms from about Indian Mountain southwestward to near Huslia and into the Koyukuk Valley. Those kind of gradually lifting northwestward throughout the afternoon hours. And then up here, that area of rain on the northern edge of that, some thunderstorms there developed just south of Point Lay. Otherwise, we had showers scattered here across the southwest interior of the Yukon Delta, and then all the rain moving in across Kodiak Island, shifting northward up to the North Gulf Coast. Again, about half an inch falling in Seward. Some areas seeing more than that already, but the heavier bulk of the rain moving up tonight and into tomorrow into that area. And then the main low center here just south of Togiak Bay this afternoon. right about there with the central pressure at 995 millibars. Higher pressure out here to the west, but a lot of clouds and areas of fog out over the Aleutians and into the Pribilof Island areas. And again, that's extending up along that band of moisture towards St. Lawrence Island. Well, tonight that trough shifts inland, so look for numerous showers here across the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, the low lifting northward across that area there. So pretty wet night coming up for those areas. Rain changing to showers here over Bristol Bay, and the frontal boundary pushing up into the interior should possibly bring a band of rain maybe across the Alaska Range into the Tanana Valley. But the heaviest rainfall amounts will be down here along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, shifting over toward Yakutat. Rain, periods of rain the entire night here for the southeast coast, all the way down to Dixon Entrance. And still could see some scattered thunderstorm activity tonight from the western Brooks Range southward there across the Kobuk-Selawik Valley areas to maybe the eastern Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, just a lot of showers following in behind, winds becoming northwest there over the Pribilof Islands. And then that next trough out here to the west shifts eastward, not all that much yet, but we've got the one trough swinging into the southwest coast. There's a chance of thunderstorms along that trough axis there from the Noatak Valley southward across the east central Seward Peninsula areas right on down the west coast there along that trough into the Yukon and Kuskokwim Valley areas, possibly down to the Kilbrook Auckland Mountains. Probably be the best chance of seeing any thunderstorm activity tomorrow, but a lot of numerous shower conditions here with this trough as it swings in. Periods of rain here along the North Gulf Coast continue, heavy at times, beginning to get a little bit lighter. That front sliding eastward here into the northern panhandle, so that'll keep that area wet tomorrow. More of a showery condition farther down to the south, and could be some scattered thunderstorms again developing here over the upper Tanana Valley, eastern interior areas, possibly the upper Yukon as well. Then that trough will bring showers to the Brooks Range area back to the southwest into the Kobuk Valley, kind of linking up with this low center here near Kivalina. And along the Arctic coast there on the east side, areas of low clouds and fog could possibly bring some IFR conditions there to the central Arctic coast, but looking at some showers there on the west side. And then, of course, a lot of low clouds and fog out here over the Bering Sea, even under some weak ridging we've got shifting across between this trough and then this one kicking in. And then the outer edge of that next system will push eastward tomorrow night and on Saturday. That's going to kick this trough right up to the southwest coast, bring a few showers in that area with that as it does, but higher pressure, low clouds and fog over the Pribilof Islands. IFR in the forecast there down to the eastern Aleutian areas, and then the tighter pressure field in advance of that frontal system, again bringing the gale force winds into the western Aleutians tomorrow night, and that's shifting over to about as far east as Adak on Saturday. And you see an increase in the winds also, possibly up to gale force in the afternoon for Atka and areas, but lighter winds for the eastern Aleutians. High pressure building here over Bristol Bay and kind of up into the southwest interior, so that's going to turn the flow more west and northwest here across Kodiak Island, south central Alaska. That should definitely shut the rainfall off and the showers and probably result in some partly sunny conditions for south central Alaska. Mostly sunny for the Kenai Peninsula. Dry now for Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast. It looks like a mostly sunny day possibly for Kodiak Island. Definitely rain-free on Saturday there, but the trough aloft shifting up into the interior, so an area of numerous showers here across about the middle Tanana Valley back to the west there, and then back to the northwest across the Kobuk into the Noatak Valley areas of the western Brooks Range. Drier conditions over the northern Seward Peninsula and the northwest coast there. Chance of thunderstorms along the central and eastern Brooks Range area. Otherwise, just showers here scattered along the eastern border down into the Wrangell Mountain areas, but this could be a partly sunny day for the Copper River Basin as well. And then this front dropping southward, kind of trailing across the southern panhandle. That'll keep it on the wet side there. Looking at some scattered showers back to the north with possibly some partial clearing conditions. Temperatures this afternoon down there along the southeast coast, all in the 50s there, mid to upper 50s, 59 both at Skagway and at Juneau, 56 at Sitka with rain, 55 also at Klawock, and a 59 at Ketchikan. 55 at Yakutat, and pretty uniform temperatures here extending along the North Gulf Coast as well, all in the mid-50s. Middleton Island up to 57. Valdez rain with 54. Cordova 56 degrees, and those east winds gusting to 35 miles an hour. 55 in Seward, but Homer pushed up to 61. 57 in Palmer. 58 at Kenai, 57 also up at Talkeetna with 65. A little warmer, those southerly winds there at Gulkana, and 70 degrees at Northway, 68 at Delta, 73 in Fairbanks, and 76 over at Eagle. Looks like the warm spot in the state today, at least at 4 p.m. 71 up at Bettle, 66 there at Anatuvik with Barrow. Fog and low clouds there, holding the temperature down to the upper 30s with mid 40s along the eastern Arctic coast. A little milder on the west side, 52 at Wainwright up to 63 at Point Lay. And 60s here, upper 60s for the Kotzebue Sound area. Kotzebue with 68 and Buckland at 67. A little cooler across the peninsula there at Nome with 62 this afternoon. 69 at Huslia, or actually that's Galena. 67 down at McGrath with 55 at Sleepmute. 56 there at Bethel. Lower 60s along the Yukon Delta coast with Amonic at 64. Same thing here at St. Michael, or actually that is Unalakleet. And along the Bristol Bay coastline, temperatures range from 52 at Cape Newenham to 57 over at King Salmon. Mid to upper 50s here along the entire Alaska Peninsula area with 52 at Unalaska with northwest winds kicking up to about 20 to 25 miles an hour this afternoon. 49 at St. Paul, 53 though at St. George. And lower 50s for the central Aleutians, and then back into the upper 40s there out towards Shimia. And for the lows tonight, in the 40s here for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, all the way up to St. Lawrence Island, and upper 30s here for the Arctic coast, especially on the central and eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise, 40s to lower 50s across the Brooks Range, lower 50s here over the northwest interior. And temperatures basically in the upper 40s to lower 50s across much of the interior of the state, all the way down to the North Gulf Coast, with the clouds and rain probably holding above the 50-degree mark, definitely in the 50s here across the southeast coast, and 40s back out to the west. Highs for tomorrow back into the 60s to lower 70s. Eagle possibly up to 71. Otherwise, no attack there, could push up to 70, and those would be the two warmest locations here. Looks pretty good over the upper Yukon Valley as well. Otherwise, most of the interior here in the 60s, south of the Alaska Range, upper 50s to lower 60s, 50s along the coast, and then looks like warming up a little bit here over the southern Panhandle, up to about 66 at Annette. Otherwise, 50s out here over the Bering Sea, upper 40s and lower 50s for the Aleutians. Flying weather, got some IFR here for the eastern Gulf Coast areas with that front pushing eastward, so I'll bring it into the northern Panhandle with IFR on down the coastline there, VFR off to the southeast. IFR for northern Prince William Sound and western Prince William Sound with marginal VFR for the remainder of the North Gulf Coast and the Kenai Peninsula. Looks pretty marginal for Kodiak Island tomorrow, but again on Saturday some of this better condition here will shift eastward with the flow becoming more west-northwesterly. And otherwise, we got IFR here along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, the southern slopes of the central Alaska Range, and with areas of smoke up over the central interior. Arctic coast, areas of IFR up there as well, mainly along the central coast with marginal VFR going east or west from that location. And then, of course, the big area IFR out here over the Pribilofs and the central Bering Sea extending down to the Aleutians. Passes, Anatuvik, VFR becoming marginal as the band of moisture lifts northward. That same forecast for Adigan as well. So lower conditions, especially on the southern entrance to start with, spreading north, becoming marginal VFR again throughout the day there for Adigan as well. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR with IFR on the eastern entrances of both passes. Windy, same forecast, IFR on the eastern entrance, otherwise marginal. And for Windy, IFR in the southern approach, otherwise marginal VFR to VFR in the north entrance. With Isabel, marginal. Mentasta looks marginal, and Tanita also looks marginal tomorrow with Portage, IFR in the eastern entrance, otherwise marginal VFR. And for Chilkoot and White, calling for IFR. Freezing levels with the front pushing eastward here. You can see the gradient pretty good right along the North Gulf Coast. That's where all the heavy rain is going to occur tomorrow. But cooler 6,000 feet here over the south central Alaska area, another pocket down over the southeastern Bering Sea, and then warming up as you head west there ahead of that next system. They'll be pushing into the western Aleutians tomorrow night. Icing threats, not quite making it to the western Aleutians tomorrow, but it will tomorrow night out there. Above 7,000 feet of the light isolated and moderate rime varieties here tending toward mixed icing later in the day tomorrow and tomorrow evening, but above about 7,000 feet, and then with warmer air aloft looking for some icing threats above 12,000 feet, probably all the way up to 22,000 of the Rime variety over the northern panhandle to about Yakutat, possibly up to the Wrangell Mountains. Winds aloft, low pressure here moving northeastward, actually pulling north and then shifting eastward. So a trough coming through is going to keep it damp and unsettled here over south central Alaska, and that trough will lift up into the central interior. And with the showers a little more numerous up in that area on Saturday, while some higher pressure builds behind this, not really strong though, and pretty good jet here about 120 knots from the west right across Kodiak Island tomorrow. 9,000 foot winds showing westerlies up to 30 knots, southerlies south to north here at about 40 knots along the western Alaska range, or actually the central and eastern Alaska range areas. Same forecast at 3,000 feet, southerlies to southwest 25 to 30 knots through here, lighter across the southeast coast, and easterlies at about 25 there along the eastern and central Arctic coast, west-southwest here across the southern Bering Sea. Turbulence-wise here along the western Alaska range and the eastern Alaska range, probably should have extended this over to Windy Pass for the light to isolated moderate chop there. Wrangell Mountains, occasional moderate chop, same thing here along the southwest coast, and over the Kuskokwim Mountains down to the Kilbrooks, pretty turbulent there, occasional widespread moderate at times, otherwise pretty smooth for the Aleutians ahead of that next system. And after the break of Hanger Flying, I'll be back with a marine forecast.
Good evening. I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hanger Flying. This evening, our guest is Jeff Oshinsky. Jeff has had a distinguished career in federal service for 27 years, with 17 years in Alaska. In the early 90s, he was the manager at the ARTCC, later managed at the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit and the Anchorage Volcano Advisory Center. He's now the Deputy Chief for Environmental and Scientific Services Division. In short, the Regional Weatherman. Jeff, welcome to Hanger Flying.
Oh, great. Thanks. It's great to be here, Harry.
Oh, welcome back. You've been on the program before.
Thanks, yes.
Obviously, weather forecasting is extremely important to pilots and operators and people involved in aviation. And you, the National Weather Service, has got a big operation up here in Alaska. I think latest numbers I saw were 240 people and 19 stations. It's a big effort. And I got to tell you, I appreciate what you guys do. You've got a tough challenge, and it makes doing the professional job that you do contributes significantly to aviation safety. So thanks very much. Let's talk a little bit about one initiative that you and I had talked about with future potential. Describe some of the modernization efforts.
Well, Harry, we're in the process now of modernizing our aviation services in Alaska. And what that means is basically going from an old way of doing business, of typing up forecasts and creating graphics by hand, essentially, to going to this digital database. And what this means, it will allow us to be able to derive a whole variety of products, basically whatever the users really want, from this digital database. And the beauty of that is all our offices in Alaska will be tied to this database. So whether you're a pilot or a mariner or whatever forecast you happen to look at, it's all being pulled from the same database and will be consistent.
So give me an idea, give our viewers an idea what a new product might look like. What exactly will it do that we can't have done now?
Well, I think the biggest change that we're going to see is we're going to see probably better resolution in the product. So in other words, we have the standard products like the MVFR, IFR flying charts and turbulence and icing. I think what we'll be able to see in the future is we'll be able to see more resolution and granularity in the forecasts. So we'll be able to forecast more distinct layers of icing and turbulence, and we'll also be able to put these products out on a more frequent basis.
Now, one of the things you mentioned to me, if I got it right, I think is very futuristic. And let's see if I can describe it right. So right now, if I'm coming back into Anchorage, I can get a terminal forecast for Anchorage, or I can get a terminal forecast for Elmendorf. But I think you're talking about maybe someday in the future, dirt strip XYZ with you can give me an idea what the weather's going to be there.
I think so. I think so. It's pretty exciting with this digital database. Part of the initiative is to improve our computer modeling. And of course, the computer modeling sort of drives how well we can produce forecasts. And as we get better and more specific models for Alaska that show the differences geographically, we'll be able to push that into this process. And so I think, you know, this may be a few years out, but I think we'll be at a point sometime where a pilot can take his, we'll say his cursor of his mouse on his computer and move it to any location in the state and click on that spot that he's interested in, he or she is interested in, and get a forecast that'll have aviation weather parameters for that site.
Wow.
I really do think that we'll get there in a few years.
That's huge. I mean, when you add that to the introduction of weather cams, we're going to have, it's really going to make an impact.
It's going to open the doors. We keep saying that this is a major paradigm shift in aviation forecasts, and the really exciting part for us here in Alaska is we're on the cutting edge. We're sort of the pathfinder for these digital aviation services. Nobody else is doing this in the country, and all eyes are focused on us up here in Alaska.
I'm going to ask this last question about forecasting. Is it science, black magic, or luck, or all three?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I saw a cartoon repeatedly throughout my career that said meteorology is 60% science and 40% art. And I've seen the numbers flipped around, 60% art, 40% science. And so the big joke is that it's sort of a combination of all those things. When you talk to forecasters, they often talk about having a gut feeling. We're trained to understand patterns, and weather patterns dictate certain weather conditions. So, you know, many of us can look at a weather map and look at a pattern and say, I don't think they're going to get the rain in Anchorage. I think it's going to be a turbulence event on the Chugach or whatever, just based on the weather pattern. And a small change in that pattern can totally change the weather for a given location.
Wow. Well, all kidding aside, I appreciate what you do and your fellow forecasters and the whole weather business, and I think you've saved a lot of people and prevented a lot of accidents. So thanks very much for your efforts.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks for being on the program.
Thanks a lot, Harry.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. And again, I want to remind you, November 15th, we're going to have our fall safety seminar. That's Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, November 15th. More details to follow. Until later, until next time, fly safe.
Welcome back. We're looking at south to southwest winds at about 20 knots here for the central and north coast, westerly at 15 for the south coast, northwest 20 with 4-foot seas for Clarence Strait, and southerlies here at about 15 for the central inner channels to 25 knots from the south for northern Lynn Canal, northern Lynn Canal tomorrow with 5-foot seas. That holds through Saturday, that forecast up there for northern Lynn Canal. Really no change here over the inside waters at all. Maybe up to 15 knots here for the Stevens Passage area. Otherwise, out along the coast, westerlies 15 to 20 knots with seas running 9 to 10 feet here all along the coastline. And for Prince William Sound, the North Gulf Coast, excuse me, gale warnings out tonight. That will give way to small craft advisories tomorrow. Wind should come down to 20 knots there for Prince William Sound, northern Cook Inlet, but 25-knot winds just about everywhere else from the south and southwest here down across Kodiak Island and the Barren Islands. And then for the Saturday outlook, lighter winds, more westerly, west to southwest, about 15 here for Kodiak Island, southwest 15 for Shelikof Strait, and westerlies here for the North Gulf Coast, turning northwest at 15 for the eastern Gulf Coast. Light variable winds in store for Prince William Sound on Saturday with possibly some sunshine, and southwesterlies 15 to 20 knots for Cook Inlet with those seas running at about 4 to 5 feet. And for the Bristol Bay zone, southwest 20 tomorrow, west-southwest 20 to 25 knots here for the Alaska Peninsula, with seas running 5 to 12 feet. And then for Saturday, lighter winds for Bristol Bay, southwest here at about 15 for the Alaska Peninsula zone. And for the Aleutians, for tomorrow here, we've got 20-knot winds over the western Aleutians, small craft advisories here from Adak out to the west a ways, otherwise southwesterlies 15 to 20 knots all the way across the Fox Islands. And then for Saturday, again, gale force winds moving into the western Aleutians tomorrow night. And that'll continue out of the southeast through Saturday, and the whole thing will progress eastward here, reaching at least AKwx, probably ATKA as well, with some gale force winds from the south up to 35 knots. And then small craft advisories, but the eastern Aleutian area staying light through Saturday, southwesterlies at about 15 with 5 to 7 foot seas. And then for the southwest coast tomorrow, south of Nunivak Island, west 20, north of the island, northwest 20, lighter northwesterlies for St. Lawrence Island, west at about 20 with 5 foot seas for the Pribilof Islands. And Saturday's outlook, southwest at about 20 knots for St. Lawrence Island with 5 foot seas. Southwest 15 here all along the southwest coast. Same forecast for the Pribilofs, southerlies 15 for the northern Bering Sea. And up along the eastern Arctic coast, look for some easterly winds up to 25 knots here for the eastern zone. Otherwise, easterlies at about 20 for much of the remainder of the coastline from Cape Beaufort or Cape Beaufort to Cape Lisburne, northeast to 10, lighter northeasterlies or lighter northerlies there from Wales to Cape Beaufort. And then for Saturday, we've got lighter, more easterly or more westerly winds there for the eastern Arctic coast, but down to 15 knots. Northeast winds at about 20 knots there for the central coast, and that's about as strong as it gets. And then for tonight, we've got rain heavy at times, and again, the gale warnings out for the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound with the heavy rain spreading eastward there into the Yakutat area. Looks pretty wet here across the Panhandle through the night tonight. The front lifting northward, the heaviest rain will be back to the west here as the low center pulls northward. This trough will swing in with some pretty good shower conditions there into the Bristol Bay area. And then for tomorrow, that low center pulls off to the northeast, one center, another, the main center, continues northward here to near Kivalina. Chance of some scattered thunderstorms along this trough axis in the west. Chance of also some thunderstorm activity over the eastern interior. It stays wet over the northern Panhandle, but that scatters out to showers on Saturday. That's a look at the weather. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.